Bob Ferber is back with us. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Peter. Thank you for having me.
Okay, we wanted to talk about this horrible episode of dogs and cats being killed and sickened. It's reported that an aflatoxin outbreak deriving from Midwestern pet foods has harmed and killed many, more than 100 dogs and cats around the country. And this happens once in a while. Aflatoxin comes from Aspergillus, and it can infect corn and grains. And dogs and cats are very susceptible to this, and unfortunately this outbreak has happened. FDA is investigating. The numbers continue to rise, and it's really a tragedy. And we wonder, Lori and I were chatting about this, what recourse does a pet owner have if their pet is harmed or dies because of this? That's one question we have for you. And then how would you go about establishing that? I mean, we know about the problems of damages and about dogs and cats being considered as a mere property, but how would you go about even establishing your belief that your animal was harmed to satisfy the law? So many questions this raises. What do you think the important or notable legal questions are related to an outbreak like this?
Well, one of the first responses that anybody has if their animal suffers from bad food or tragically dies is, what can I do? What can I do to literally punish the people that allowed this to happen and to make sure it doesn't happen again? And legally, the short answer, Peter, is there's not much you can do at this point. This is called product liability. That's the field of law. Where somebody who has a product, whether it's a television, a medical device, or food, or anything, where the product is defective or in some way that either damages the product, or in the case of food or a medical device like an implant, if it's done improperly, then if it's manufactured improperly, or then you have potentially a product liability lawsuit. The laws on product liability are very extensive, but you can simplify it or sum it up pretty much as this. Did the manufacturer of the food or the medical device, did they follow established procedures? Mm-hmm. Did they do everything that was considered reasonable? And did this incident happen, like in the case of the food? Were they following established legal procedures for preparing the dog food, or did they deviate it? Does the FDA require that you test the food with several, that each batch of food is tested in a laboratory, or the ingredients? Are there standards for the ingredients that were followed? What was not done that was supposed to be done? And the government is the one that sets the standards for this. So it's a matter of finding, if my animal suffered and died because of tainted or poisoning in the food, did the manufacturer do anything wrong? So we have to look at what does the government require of food manufacturers. And the really pathetic answer is not much. We've had a history in this country of foods that were tainted. One of the most infamous instances was of melamine, which is actually a manufacturing product. It's a form of a plastic that's used in construction, and it was discovered after countless animals died, thousands of animals, as I recall, died in this country, that Chinese manufacturers were putting melamine, which is literally it's a construction material, into the food. And it's the way the melamine is designed, it fooled some of the instruments that it mimicked a form of protein, so that it actually was boosting the protein content. And from what we know, the manufacturers in China knew damn well that they were putting a dangerous product in, and it was fooling people and customers into thinking that they had a dog food that had a good amount of protein. That actually changed the whole way the world looked at dog food and cat food coming from China. And actually, China, the government reacted very strongly to that because they lost a lot of business. And to this day, many people, if not most animal lovers, will look to see, to make sure it didn't come from China.
And that was about 20 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And in fact, as a response to that, in 2007, the government required melamine testing in baby food.
Oh, wow.
Because it was actually in baby food also. But unbelievably, they didn't require it for pet food. So to this day, there is no testing of whether melamine is in your animal food. And, we could, of course, do a whole separate show on labeling of animal foods. When something says that your product was manufactured in the United States, that doesn't mean that all the ingredients came from the United States. Right. The ingredients, one of the things that happened after the melamine incident was Thailand and other surrounding Asian countries were being used to provide the ingredients. And so people had a false sense of security that, it's not coming from China. Well, whatever Thailand was using, there's no way of knowing that what Thailand was giving you wasn't coming from China. In fact, there is no tracking system to speak of to know the ingredients in your pet food, where those ingredients came from. If it says, organic chicken or just chicken is the main ingredient, and you want that as the main ingredient, do you know where those chickens came from? Do you know where the food came from that was fed to the chickens? All the vitamin supplements, the other parts of it, the vegetables, did they come from Mexico? Did they come from another country? And did that country get it from another country? And each of those countries, each has their own standards, or may I say substandards, for testing. So that when many of your listeners can look on a can of their food and it'll say manufactured in the United States. That just means that all the stuff was put together in a factory somewhere in the United States. Yeah. But there's no assurance where the ingredients came from. And the sad thing is the federal government isn't requiring any testing. Now, what the federal government has relied on is a really terrible system. It relies on waiting for animals to die before looking into it. Whereas, we've had outbreaks of E. coli and other salmonella in people food. And usually it's traced to where the manufacturers failed to identify it during a testing. But they were looking for it. And that's why most of the food that we eat is safe and doesn't have these bacteria, because there's a testing going on during the manufacturing process of putting the food and packaging it. But with animals, no. Yeah. The government says, we're not going to require that. We're going to wait till your animal dies, and then you tell us about that, and then we'll look into it. And in fact, in 2007, the Food and Drug Administration Amendments Act, that was a law that was passed by Congress, called for the FDA to make several changes as a result of the melamine scandal. One of them was, first of all, to improve the reporting. There's no mandatory reporting of, if you tell PetSmart that you bought a can of food and your animal is throwing up, that's not going to go anywhere. They're going to be, we'll give you another can of food.
Yeah, great.
Some veterinarians will report it, some won't. There's no uniform system for reporting what animals are sick or die, which is why, Peter, these things are usually discovered after hundreds or maybe thousands of animals have died, and then the government says, maybe we should look into it. So, there was a recommendation that be improved, and it did get improved. This is the good news. There's a better reporting system after the animals die. That was step one. But they also recommended that the standards be better, that in food ingredient definitions and the standard quality be improved. That was not done. So, as many informed listeners know, something that says there's a certain ingredient, is it a quality ingredient? Is it garbage? Is it something that you would never serve to any human or animal? Is it tainted? You don't know. You can only say that, oh, it has this ingredient, but you don't know anything about it. And that law told the FDA to change that, and they didn't. It also called for a third thing, much better labeling and detailed information for the consumer. And again, not only did they not improve the definitions and the quality of the ingredients, they didn't do anything to change the labeling. So consumers right now, Peter, are at a loss they're very limited in their ability to know what's a good food. So we're relying on the FDA, which has not done their job, to provide more protection for the consumer. And the consumer is really at a loss to know whether the ingredients that they're in their can of dog or cat food is quality ingredients. And by the way, Peter, this doesn't matter whether it's the best quality food that you can find on the market, the most expensive, the brand name that is you think is this is the best. You can't know. So whether it's a lower grade food found on the bottom shelf in the market, or it's the premium, most expensive food in a pet supply place, consumers have no way of knowing at this point whether the food they're giving their animals is really safe.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. Okay, thanks for the lesson and the tough news, Bob.